Hey guys, it's Greg Jones for Engine Builder. We are here at the Builders Brawl just outside of St. Louis. It's day 2 of the weekend and I'm joined by Jim Kilpatrick of Kilpatrick Racing Engines. Behind us is his 521 cubic inch supercharged Hemi, and it's our engine of the week.
Engine Builder's Engine of the Week is sponsored by Pengrade, Precision Performance Pengrade, always the original green oil. L-Ring DOS Original, leading technology, leading service. And NPW and Engine and Performance Warehouse, for all your parts needs.
Thank
Jim,
you, Greg.
Thanks so much for giving us some of your time.
Thank you.
You know, we heard this thing run at the test and tune last night, blew us back, had to know more about it, and would love to hear, what you got into the car and into the engine and all that good stuff.
Well, this is a pretty standard 521 inch alcohol screw blown Hemi. The screw blower was our latest addition on this. We had always run a 1471 high helix blower on it. That made roughly 35 pounds of boost and took about 300 horsepower to drive through the belt. And that's where you'll see the difference on the big, huge drive belts on the Roots blowers. The screw blower is so efficient, it only takes 40 horsepower to run and it can make 60 pounds of boost.
Okay, yeah.
The Roots would typically start to lay over a little bit at 8,500 RPM, and you would start to pull fuel away with a high-speed lean out on it. The screw blower just builds boost and keeps building it, so there's no fuel being pulled away on the top. It needs it all because it's blowing more air in it. The block is a Brad Anderson. This is a low deck Hemi. The reason we run a low deck is because the ports in the head are so high that you use a standard deck intake manifold on a low deck block, and it makes the whole combination work. The high port Hemi head is an amazing thing because of the flow characteristics of it. This engine in an alcohol funny car, they run to about 11,500. We shift this one at 10,000. We're trying to save valve springs and be easier on the engine parts and so forth, but we still do put bearings in it after every 4 to 5 passes. The rod bearing really tells you the story of how your tune-up is, and it tells you if there's a timing problem, a fuel problem, and so we're really looking at that bearing and measuring the width of the bearing to see how it's getting pounded.
Yeah.
This does use a very soft M-series bearing in it. The bearing is the sacrificial piece inside the engine. It's made soft to take the abuse off the rod and the crank. Crank is a Winberg 415 stroke, so a lot less stroke than the old 526 funny cars had, a 4.5 inch. That really allows the RPM to be there. Doesn't quite build the torque that the other one did, but man, it makes up for it on the top end big time.
I bet. Very good.
Traditional magneto, we had it tuned up to 56 amps. 56 amps will throw a foot spark in open atmosphere, so you do not go around pulling plug wires off this looking for a miss, because they'll find you laying over in the parking lot somewhere. So these things are not sold to the general public, and there's a reason for that. So it's hard to believe we gap the spark plugs at 18 thousandths of an inch, and there's times where it has a hard time firing an 18 thousandths gap under 60 pounds of boost.
Yeah.
Car is Lenko shifted manually. Always liked the hot rods, thought that was the hot rod look, was the Lenko levers inside, and that's where this car has always had them, and it's always gonna have them. Steer it with one hand and shift it with the other and hang on for the ride. So
very good. Jim, you mentioned the Winberg crank. You want to talk about some of the other internals?
R&R connecting rods makes the best billet rod there is. They're kind of a skunk work shop. You guys look them up and they'll build a rod for you. These have a 12 millimeter rod bolt in them that's made out of the 625 new age material. If anything's going to fail in the bottom end, it's the rod pulling itself apart and usually the bolt breaking. So they've taken it a step further and put the biggest bolt in the industry for alcohol into these rods. We've always used diamond pistons in it.
Okay.
This is pretty much a standard funny car piston, so 4467 bore, 6,700 rod, and it makes 11.5 to 1 static compression, and you put 60 pounds of boost on that, and you heard that in your ears last night.
Yeah, so. We did. Yeah, we did. Very good. Jim, how about the top end? I understand you had a cam swap recently, and that's made a big difference.
Yep, so when we set this up originally, we have a funny car racer in our area, Andy Bull, and we're able to buy his takeoff parts, because when those guys find an extra 25 horsepower from a head change or something, they will never go backwards and use their old set of heads from last year. So this very block and one of the heads that's on it right now, one top alcohol funny car in Indy in 2015. And now this is so old to them that they'd never consider using any of this stuff. Yeah. For us, we can make an easy 4,000 horsepower from it. For them, it's not enough, so good for us. We get to buy the parts. Our shop is a full service machine shop. We do all our own crankshaft, block, and cylinder head work. And we're able to take some of these used and battered parts and make them as good or better than new. So we did some changes on the head as far as valve angle and so forth to find a little extra flow. We had tooling made for our sun and seat cutter that will dial the valve seats in on this thing. It's always a problem with these big valve springs. This uses a Manley valve spring on the intake side that's 1,450 pounds open.
Wow.
So with 1 inch of lift and 10,000 RPM, you can imagine it's a copper beryllium seat that's in there. It just gets hammered to death. So getting that machining on that valve seat just right is critical to making it seal. When it seals, it makes power.
Yeah, very good. Any other valve train parts that you want to shout out?
Pretty much the Manton stuff. You can see it doesn't even have a roller on the exhaust tip, and the reason for that is basically it's pushing straight on the exhaust valve. It does not roll the rocker across the top of the valve the way the intake does. It's a 1.9 ratio rocker with 520 cam lift on the nose of the cam. So you do the math, it's just shy of 1 inch, and you see those valve springs, the way they get squashed when you're setting the valves. It's amazing that they live, but they get changed every 5 passes. Also on the intake side. The exhaust side we don't care so much about. It's just along for the ride.
Yeah.
But we did make tooling to be able to change the valve spring on the car, but it is a 3-man job to compress that spring on the car and be able to do that.
Yeah, I bet. Awesome. How about the oiling setup that you guys are running?
Oiling setup, this is a Titan oil pump. It's a wet sump system. We do use an accumulator on it. We like the accumulator so we can pre-lube the engine. The accumulator also, when you pull the chutes on this thing, all the oil's at the front of the pan and the oil pressure basically goes to 0. So the 2 ports in the accumulator are feeding the engine bearings while the engine is shut off.
Yeah.
You shut these engines off with fuel and not spark. So when you're driving it, you come through, the chute is out, you'll turn the fuel on and the engine will actually pick up. If you've heard them get nice and clean and right before they shut off, that's because they're leaning out, and that way the cylinders are not all full of fuel. If you just clicked it off with spark, the whole engine would be full of fuel, and we try to not do that to wash the rings and so forth.
Yeah.
We do run a lube in our alcohol, a top-end lube. That's illegal in NHRA, but in this racing, we're able to do it. The reason we like the lube is because behind these butterflies, there are 24 injectors back there. So we're injecting the majority of the primary fuel, which is at idle, right through those 24 injectors and feeding the blower an icy fog, and that makes for a happy screw blower.
Yeah.
So If you dry the blower out, the thing will destroy itself in a hurry. This combination really is the latest in technology for mechanical injection, and it's a bulletproof setup. It'll actually frost this hat up when it's idling, so wow. It's you can tell it's taking in some nice cool fuel.
Let us know if there's anything that we're glossing over or didn't cover, but you gave us tons of great detail on
No, it's check out our website, kilpatrickengine.com. We have the Bad Judgement Racing team page. We will be posting things from this weekend and really the competition that's here this weekend, and just seeing what was coming up through the staging lanes gave me just my old love for drag racing back, because seeing all the stuff all the different combinations that these guys all build just like us, and having them all just run as fast as they were last night, we're excited for today.
Yeah, so. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Jim, before we let you go, remind the folks how much horsepower you're getting out of this.
So we run this at 92 over, so the blower's running just about twice a crankshaft speed, which I know sounds pretty crazy, but that's how these screws run. You can run them 120 over. Typically in the no prep, we run it at about 3,500 horsepower. So we do have 500 in reserve. It's all manipulated with timing with the power grid. In the old days, I did it all with fuel.
Yeah.
Nowadays, we just do it with the stroke of a pen and a timing curve. So it's not as, once the fuel is set on these, you pretty much leave them alone and do everything through timing.
Right.
And that's how traction and, we can set for track conditions way more accurately than we could in the old days.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. And lastly, just talk about the expectations for tonight and out there on the track. What are you hoping to see?
Well, I think it's going to be as it's titled, a brawl. And from what I saw in Big Tire last night, there are some damn fast cars here, but this one will be right there with them.
Yeah.
So. It's going to be anybody's race. The driver is going to have to be on the tree. This is an instant green tree at this track.
Right.
These guys are all used to it. NHRA guys would not know what to do with that, but these no prep guys are savvy. There's no screwing around on the starting line. They get up, they're ready to run, and that's what makes us love this kind of racing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, hopefully we see you after the final and you have a cold drink with us.
There you go, Jim. I appreciate the time. Awesome
sir.
Hemi engine. We'll make sure we have our earplugs out there.
Oh yeah, you better have them on. This is the loudest car on the property other than that nitro car, but that's cheating. So.
Absolutely. I want to thank Jim Kilpatrick. Make sure you're checking out Kilpatrick Racing Engines. Make sure you're checking out Engine Builder for more engine content. Appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.